Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, says he's offered junior doctors an 11% pay rise in the hope of averting a planned vote tomorrow for strike action, which could hit NHS services in the run-up to Christmas. But it looks tonight as if the ballot will go ahead, with the British Medical Association claiming changes to terms and conditions could still leave its members worse off, even under the new contracts.
We've had 6 studies in the last 5 years that have said that we've got a higher than expected mortality rate at weekends. We need to sort that out. I think that's what doctors want to do as well. So I think this is a time now for doctors to look carefully at what the government's actually proposing, not, I'm afraid, some of the wild stories that have been circulating.
This is a junior doctor's contract. Everything is in the detail, and until we see that detail, it's very hard to say whether this is a proposal that's fair or unfair. And the fact is that what we've seen over the last 6 to 8 weeks is that there's been headlines being chased by the government, and every time that we've analysed what's behind those headlines, they've unravelled.
Well, we asked the Department of Health for an interview, but no one was available. So I'm joined now by Dr. Roshana Median, who's currently working as an orthopaedic registrar. 11% pay offer must sound pretty tempting, doesn't it?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, but I'd just like to make clear that this isn't a pay rise at all, not in any shape or form. So there's been no change in the pay contract for the basis of the contract. All Mr. Hunt has done is offer us a bribe.
Well, the Department of Health says that it will be a pay increase for 75% of doctors. I mean, we don't have them here to challenge them on that, but that's what they're saying.
I've actually looked through this contract with a friend who is an employment lawyer. So she's looked at the details with a fine-tooth comb. All this is a bribe for the next few years for us to ignore the concerns about patient safety and fairness.
If it's a bribe, you accept it's a pay rise?
No, it's not actually. What it seems to be is an assurance that our pay will stay the same for 2 or 3 years, and then the contract that he's been wanting to impose over the past few months will come into force. And I'm afraid doctors will not take bribes on this.
Do you accept, whether you quibble with the figures, but do you accept that the new contract is to support a 24-hour, 7-day NHS, which is what the government points out was in their manifesto? Do you accept they have a duty to deliver on that?
We all have a duty to deliver on a 24-hour, 7-day emergency service, which we already do. I, for one, and all of my colleagues already work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I work Saturdays and Sundays. Mr. Hunt is misleading the public when he says this does not happen, and actually it's having detrimental effects on patients.
He says the BMA is misleading you. Do you feel misled by the BMA?
Not at all.
So the fact that the BMA refused to talk to the Health Secretary, I mean, you can't lay all the blame at the government's door, can you, here?
Well, I don't think that's true. They haven't refused to talk. What they've asked is, consistently, they've asked for negotiations, and meaningful negotiations, where a gun isn't held to their head. At the moment, Mr. Hunt wants to impose the contract and will not budge on 22 of 23 points. That's not a negotiation in my book, and I don't think it's a negotiation in most people's books.
But the fact remains we're in a sort of Mexican standoff here, and the risk is that patients are going to end up losing out. I mean, at the moment, I would say doctors are pretty trusted, but if you go on strike, there's a risk you're going to lose that trust, isn't there?
And that's why we're happy to talk. We've always been happy to talk, unlike Mr. Hunt. In fact, in the next few weeks, we're going to go out onto the streets and speak to patients and the public ourselves. Mr. Hunt isn't doing that. All he's doing is giving you covert messages overnight, and not to ourselves or our representatives, and spinning it to the media.
So what would it take for you to talk to the Health Secretary?
We've been asking for the same thing for months, and that is assurances on patient safety, first and foremost, assurances on equality for women who take maternity leave and cancer researchers, etc., and assurances on a fair pay deal for doctors.
Dr. Roshana Median, thank you very much for joining us.
I've been getting